Now on Face the State, global warming, state parks, bears, and more. Big issues facing our state. Will meet the woman in charge of the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, Katie Dykes. Also, a new report to limit competition in the home care industry. We'll discuss. One of our state's biggest attractions is turning the Big Ten. Matt Fleury of the Connecticut Science Center is with us today to talk about what's next. Plus, my conversation with Norah O'Donnell as she gets ready to take over the CBS Evening News. It's all straight ahead this Sunday, July 7th, 2019.
From Eyewitness News, Connecticut's most watched local political program, this is Face the State.
Good morning, it's 8:30 and thanks for joining us for Face the State. I'm Dennis House. Not all issues facing our state can be handled under the Golden Dome at the state capitol. Right now, we have an increasing number of human encounters with bears, and the state's also dealing with some climate change. With us now is the new commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection, Energy and Environmental Protection, Katie Dykes. Commissioner Dykes, thanks for being with us here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Dennis.
So it's interesting because you have had a lot of issues you've been dealing with, from climate change to state parks to bears. And I want to begin with bears because so many people are talking about it. They seem to be showing up in homes much more than usual. Is the population actually increasing?
It is, yes. So, this is a long-term trend in the state of Connecticut. We've seen a lot of our forest come back over the last century, and that's created a lot of great habitat for bears. And our bears are reproducing, the number of cubs that they have each year have a survival rate of about 80%. So that means that each year we're adding to the bear population. And we also have a lot of humans who are moving into suburban communities, pushing out into those forested areas. So that's naturally bringing an expanding bear population into more frequent encounters with our citizens' families in the state of Connecticut.
I've been told that the black bears we have in Connecticut tend to be docile. They're not vicious and aggressive like the brown bears or grizzly bears you'd find out west. Is that true? But there still is some inherent danger. They're wild after all. They
are wild animals, and by the way, they're just majestic creatures. It's a really exciting, moment for a hiker who's out in one of our state parks or forests to encounter a bear, and generally speaking, the bears are going to be more afraid of you than you are of them. But the challenge that we face is where bears are coexisting in these neighborhoods where we have a lot of residential communities, and they're becoming habituated. They're becoming used to food sources that may be available to them where folks have a bird feeder out, or they may not be securing their trash. Those become bears start to get used to encountering humans, and that's where we end up in dangerous situations.
Does the state need a bear hunt?
Well, this has been hotly debated at the legislature, and I testified there this spring. We do believe that with this population that we have, and expecting that it's going to continue to expand, tools like hunting are used in states surrounding us to help control those populations and keep them at a reasonable level. So without that tool in our toolkit, we expect that we'll continue to see more frequent encounters.
But it hasn't been legalized yet. So what would the argument be to lawmakers if you had to testify and say, testify again, we need this bear hunt and here's why?
It's frankly just to ensure that we can control the population from expanding further. And by the way, we have a lot of folks who are really concerned about the humaneness of the hunt. They really appreciate having these bears around, appreciate having the chance to experience wildlife. But we want to make sure that our compassion for bears is extending to ensuring that we're not getting them habituated to be in our communities and not be afraid of humans, because that's when we run into challenges, in terms of human safety, which we care about deeply, and also instances where we may have to euthanize a bear because it's become so used to being around humans that they may lose that fear of people and get into situations where they may be entering into a home or something that would put them and the human population in danger.
How long would you like to see a bear hunt last, and how many bears would be killed during this process?
Well, those are, we have great technical staff at Dept who are skilled in wildlife management. You know, we would do an assessment of the population, look at what are the right communities where we should, where there'd be community acceptance of a hunt. In this legislative session, for example, there was a proposal to allow for bear hunting only in Litchfield County, for example, more of a rural location. I know that there are concerns in suburban communities about allowing hunting closer to residential neighborhoods, for example. So it has to be, we would want to engage in a process to try to understand how to design a program that balances all of those needs. But principally the focus would be on population control at the same time as ensuring that we are promoting public awareness of how to coexist with bears in the right way. And that means, for your listeners, it's really important things you can do today. Take your bird feeders inside, when it's not the winter time. Secure your trash, secure your barbecue, your grill, things that might attract bears into your neighborhood. That's the most important thing you can do. It's good for you and it's good for the bears.
I want to talk a little bit about climate change, global warming, some call it. Behind you, we've got this beautiful scene of Old Saybrook. What will that look like 50 years from now? Because you have this graphic on your website. Well, actually, by 2050,
right,
you believe the water levels will have risen to the point that some homes could be in danger.
The scientific consensus is that we are facing, real catastrophic impacts from our the failure to control our carbon emissions, and this is obviously a major issue around the globe. We're really proud here in the state of Connecticut to have strong programs that are doing so we can ensure we're doing our part to help reduce harmful greenhouse gas emissions that are contributing to this global problem. And we're also focused on ensuring that we're using the best science to help us make prudent decisions today about how to prepare for the impacts of climate change, which in a state with hundreds of miles of coastline will be significant.
Which towns will be hit the hardest, do you believe?
Well, we know that certainly in those coastline communities, particularly farther to the southeast, we'll see more pronounced flooding. Certainly in times where we have major hurricanes and storms.
Like the Havens, East Haven, West Haven, they always tend to have a lot of flooding. Do you envision perhaps some of these towns maybe not disappearing right away, but over time?
We know that nuisance flooding is going to become more pronounced, more impactful, more catastrophic. And by the way, there are going to be inland impacts as well. We're seeing, for example, invasive species, invasive insects that are taking their toll on trees around the state. We're a heavily forested state, so that's required us to do a lot of trimming of dead trees in our state parks around the state. We know that it's impacting, for example, rainfall events that are going to be. We're going to see more rain falling in a shorter period of time. That impacts infrastructure like dams and other waterways. So this is something that we have to prepare for. The good news is that we have great scientific tools available to us through UConn and others. We have great talent in the state that are helping bring this information forward. And we are working at the state level, Dept, together with our sister agencies and under Governor Lamont's leadership to make sure that we're thinking carefully about how to prepare for this in how we're managing the operations of the state and the infrastructure that we're responsible for.
Katie Dykes, the commissioner of DEP, also known as Dept. We thank you for being on the program.
Thank
you
so much for having me.
When we come back, a new challenge for home care, and later, a big milestone. And we welcome your comments on social media, but you can also watch past editions of Face the State right now on our YouTube channel or our app.